There is a place on this planet where peace reigns supreme. A small valley dominated by the sound of the river, with towering rock faces and dense fairytale woodland, where a thick, soft blanket of moss covers the boulders. A place where man and nature can coexist in harmony thanks to a lifestyle from a bygone era. A valley only inhabited in summer, offering breathtaking views and a rich history. No, not Tolkien's Middle-earth, but Valle Bavona, a small side valley, about 10 kilometers long, that branches off the Maggia Valley at Cavergno and climbs to San Carlo. There are 12 villages called Terre, lands along the valley floor, all only inhabited during the summer, plus a hamlet abandoned for centuries due to the threat of a creeping landslide. These recall to mind those villages in children's storybooks, tight groups of small houses and stables hugging the land and nestled between towering vertical rock faces. They all help keep the secrets buried under the boulders in this valley. The fields around these settlements were once far more extensive, but have been destroyed by river floods or buried by landslides over the years. Valle Bavona is a valley best explored on foot. A drover's route passes through the 12 villages, letting you see with your own eyes the remaining traces of a bygone era in a landscape of extraordinary rugged beauty. Fairytale is, without doubt, the best-known place in the valley. Nestled next to a dramatic 110 meters high waterfall, this fairy tale village has a certain mystical quality. The Bavona Valley has been inhabited since ancient times. However, people ceased to live here all year round in 1500 or thereabouts, as natural disasters and the consequent environmental degradation made living conditions unsustainable. The valley inhabitants were forced to settle permanently in Cavergno and bygone, and only return to the Bavona Valley in summer. Hence the tradition of transhumance here, the seasonal movement of livestock and people from the valley floor to the mountain pastures. Valle Bavona is now a popular destination, not only for hikers in search of peace and breathtaking views, but also for trail runners who love a challenge. Val Calnegia is a side valley of the Val Bavona, some 3 km long, that starts at Puntid, just above the Fairytale waterfall. A valley shaped by the force of nature when the glaciers melted, this valley can only be reached on foot from Fairytale via steep steps carved into the rock. Although the people of the Bavona Valley found the land very inhospitable and unyielding, they still got the most out of this extreme valley. 70% of this 124 square kilometers of mountainous territory is unproductive. Boulders and rocks are everywhere, and only 1.5% of the total valley area is actually cultivable. These extreme conditions, however, forced the inhabitants of the Bavona Valley to be very creative. They made this hostile land their ally by turning the crevices between the boulders into homes, shelters for their livestock, and cellars. These are known as splui in the local dialect. Hanging meadows are another typical anthropic feature in Valle Bavona. The inhabitants top the boulders with soil to create extra arable land. A truly admirable gargantuan effort in response to the scarcity of arable land on the valley floor. The inhabitants of the Bavona Valley now enjoy a simple lifestyle while they escape the heat and the hustle and bustle of life in the city during the summer months. 3 hydroelectric power plants in the Bavona Valley produce an abundance of electricity. Yet all the villages here, apart from San Carlo, are still not connected to mains electricity. Many inhabitants have installed solar panels or a centralized natural gas tank. This lack of electricity and the fact that there were no roads until the 1950s have undoubtedly contributed to the preservation of such a traditional rural lifestyle in this valley. Although the region isn't far from Locarno, it doesn't match the stereotypical image of Ticino. There are no golden palm trees, riviera, or vineyards, and very little sun. In winter, a lot of places don't get any light at all. Val Bavona is surrounded by sheer rock walls, and less than 2% of its surface is suitable for cultivation. To preserve these meager resources, the valley subscribes to an almost cave-like architecture. These days, people just blow up boulders that are in the way, but that wasn't possible before. So people built their homes underneath them, above them, anywhere they could. The end result reminds one of a stony Smurf village. People also built terraces on the mountain slopes as a way to salvage fertile ground. In this way, they were actually able to cultivate land between and above the rocks, which became known as hanging gardens. Livestock weren't left out either, receiving shelter in dugouts beneath the numerous boulders. All of the crooked buildings in the valley's 12 villages look like they've either been crowned with an imposing monolith or squeezed into a few square meters between two rocks. Everything that was done had a reason: to preserve every last inch of fertile ground. That's why they built such tall houses, early skyscrapers, to use up less land. The small town of Son Lerto was built entirely in the middle of an ancient rockslide, and people have lived there for millennia, despite the harsh conditions. Judging from the first human traces found at the foot of Monte Basodino, 3,200 meters, the area was already populated during Ötzi's time more than 5,000 years ago, mainly by hunters and people searching for crystals. Val Bavona does have some advantages. It has plenty of water, forests, semi-precious stones, and mountain passes that are relatively easy to access. The discovery of a Roman necropolis in the valley's south indicates that these ancient European rulers had already begun visiting the region in the early years of the first millennium BC. Their successors went on to develop a pastoral economy based on small goat herds, hard cheeses, and modest farming. During winter, people's diet mainly consisted of dried chestnuts. Life was hard, but they carried on until misfortune struck. In the 16th century, the Little Ice Age began. Winters became longer, summers wetter, and it rained more. Colossal landslides swept away parts of the territory on an unprecedented scale, the river overflowed, and the scarce amount of farming land available became waterlogged. That's when people lost hope and were forced to leave. Since then, the place has barely changed. People who had to leave settled at the bottom of the valley and only used their old houses during summertime. By returning to their previous dwellings in summer, the valley's farmers have stuck to the basic principle of transhumance. Although these days they only invest in their winter homes. Coupled with the fact that there weren't any roads until the 1950s, this means that the villages have kept their original rudimentary look. Inhabited only during summer, the small villages appear frozen in time in their craggy, unassuming setting, still without electricity. This last point is hotly debated in the valley on a regular basis, with some in favor of connecting the villages to the grid. But all the talk never leads anywhere. It isn't really seen as a big disadvantage. People are used to doing without electricity. They use wood and candles instead. It's also a way of returning to their roots. Although the odd blue square peeking out from amongst the stone roofs shows how the valley's traditional way of life can benefit from the occasional solar-powered boost. Val Bavona's biodiversity, kitchen gardens growing on boulders, and abandoned rural landscape all symbolize a heritage that needs to be protected. The valley was also chosen to illustrate the 2020 chocolate gold coin, an initiative of the non-profit organizations Swiss Heritage Society and Pro Natura.